What is up, everyone? Today we have a Stihl chainsaw here. It's an MS210. It's 40 cc's. Nothing really special about it. It's just a normal little saw. I don't know what that is. 16-inch bar, 14-inch bar. It's not very big, but it is only a 40 cc engine. The story behind this is the owner said that, now this is odd, I've had two of these exact same saws, and one of them had the exact same problem, and eventually we came to a conclusion it's just not worth putting the money into it. For whatever reason, the person who wants to keep this does think it's worth it, so their loss is my gain. But I called a local Stihl distributor, found some parts, and I called the guy. I'm like, so it's basically like a rip-off. I mean, the parts that you're gonna need is gonna be like $300 or $200. So what the story behind it is that it was running, and all of a sudden it stopped. They looked at it. They realized they had two fuel cans that were exactly the same. One on the side had marker or Sharpie that was written in probably the Great Depression time and wore off. So when they put the fuel in, they accidentally grabbed the straight fuel. So now it was running and actually got pretty far from what he was saying. He said that he was about a good 15-20 minutes into it before he even noticed the difference. Now, that could just be because there's fuel left in the tank, or the line, or the carb was full, so whatever portion they got to that point was different, but you know, it is what it is. So we are going to be installing, not the one from Stihl. I called them and I said, hey, you can get literally the entire engine. And when I mean the entire engine, I mean everything. The base. Just open this here. You usually don't get that. That actually didn't come in the Stihl kit. Import spark plug. Yeah. The famous L7T brand. We won't be using that. Bearings. Get that away. Literally the entire cylinder head. New rings. New seals. Oh, that's the roller bearing. New roller bearing. I didn't even know about that one. Even that's a surprise to me. That's a nice touch. Pin. New piston. And inside there in the bag is the clips for the pin. So I told him, you can literally get this for 30 bucks. Is it worth it? I don't know. Do you want me to try it? He said yes. So we are going to completely disassemble this, because you have to take basically everything off, and it looks like a giant pain, and don't get me wrong, it is, but it's not too hard once you've done it once or twice. Now I know what you're thinking. What if I haven't done this once or twice? Well, I'm assuming that's why you're watching this video. Let's get you into a better viewpoint. I don't know how much better that is, but we're just going to take off the recoil. This is a C. C means that when you pull on the pull cord, there's like a springy mechanism that actually winds up and then releases, and then you are able to start the engine that way, so you don't actually have to pull with all your might. Consequences, sometimes it does that. So keep that in mind. That seems to be fine. Okay. First rule of chainsaws. You have to make everything insanely awkward to store. And why do I say that? Because everything on here, from the plastic, from the handles, from everything, once you take it off, takes up 3 times as much room as the saw. You want to keep a mental note of where all these bolts go. Just know if it goes in metal, you probably have a fine thread. If it goes in plastic, more likely than not you have a very coarse thread, like this. It's a very coarse thread. Those are the ones that came out of the plastic. I'm going to disconnect the spark plug. While I don't suspect it's going to magically turn on, I also don't want it to be the one that it decides to work for. Is there fuel in here? Assuming yes. There is. Okay. Well, we at least took out the pressure, so we're working on a 2-cycle. Make sure that you release the pressure from the tank, otherwise when you take off your fuel lines you will be wearing it. Let's take off this throttle. Now if I remember correctly, this throttle looks pretty troublesome, but it's not too, yeah, it's not too bad. Putting it on, it's not horrible, but it's also not necessarily something I would want to do all the time. There's also something odd I remember about this choke. Oh yeah, I think it just comes right out. Yeah, it does. Then the fuel line comes off. I'll just move that to the side. You know, we're going to want to dump that gas out of that carburetor, but I don't think it's going to be dirty. Let's see here. Let's put the carb somewhere else. So right now, we should be able to take off this weird chain tensioner system. I think that's all you have to do for this. Yeah, it is. Okay. Yeah, this is a tensioner that just goes, back and forth and tensions it. We're not going to worry too much about the chain or the bar. We probably will have to take off that clutch, though. Yeah, we will, because we're going to take off both the clutch and the flywheel. This is called the engine stop, and it does exactly that. It stops your engine, but adapters have in. You put it in just like you would on a spark plug, and instead of having to put like a rope or twine or something down the spark plug hole. Oh, I think the fuel might have leaked a little bit. You just have to put that in there, and it's a lot easier to take off the clutch. And flywheel isn't too bad. I mean, it could be worse. Let's just put it that way. Flywheel should be standard thread, when these clutches are reverse thread. So let's find a bit that fits. It has to be a deep socket. That's why there's a deep socket on there. And loosen is tighten and tighten is loosen. So we're going to want to tighten this. But before we do that, you want to slowly spin the engine over. Well, guess we don't have to worry about that now. I think it's seized. Okay. If you cared about your engine, you would not have let the piston ram itself into the top of that stop. But we have a new one. I'm not too worried about it. Okay. I thought there was something else in there, but I guess not. So we have to remember the stacking order of all this. So, clutch. We have the oiler system here. So now that we have that part, all we need now to do is let's take out a couple of these screws here. Now, yeah, it looks like they're all the standard. I think there's some on the bottom. There is, there's two. I don't know if this is going to come off quite yet. Oh no, there is one more in there. Now I think this black handle should somewhat come off. There we are. Now, we are ready to get a pair of pliers so we don't spill fuel everywhere. And then let's get that clutch off. If you didn't have a piston stop in there now, this is where you're going to need it as well. Pliers, of course. But we're going to have to take off the flywheel nut. Ooh, what's this? This is loosen, so we don't want to. Oh, that's doesn't usually happen. Doesn't look like it's broken too. Well, that's lucky. Interesting. One might think when looking at this red stuff on there that someone had just came in here and gooped it up with some silicone and tried to get it to make it work again. That's actually OEM. There is no such thing as a gasket for this or a seal or anything like that. So we need to, when we replace it, we also need to use that silicone. Does this top come off too yet? I bet it would if this wasn't in there. I don't need the pliers right now. Take take that off. Put the air filter stuff. This should just be a boot. It goes in. Yeah, very nice. This looks like it also can just be pushed in, but we need to remove the connections. Power connection. Push all that through. Is there anything else holding it on? The piston stop is holding it on. Okay, now that that's done and taken care of, all this. Okay, let's remember this goes on here. Oh. Okay. It looks like it should be easy, but it's not. Let's turn off that blade brake. Think we are safe. Let's try to take off the exhaust. To do that, it's just a couple of these. Either 8mm or 5/16. Either one would work. Technically, it's supposed to be 8mm, and these just slide right out. So we'll put the exhaust components off to its side, and we'll work on the bottom. So it's kind of a weird system here, but these 4 bolts will hold the engine together, and on the base it's a dual purpose bolt. Probably just saw the end of an impact gun, but let's remember these long ones are important. You forget to clip one just to have it leak all over anyway. I guess the gas has to come out anyway, so now it should be good. So these 4 we need to put off to the side. Oh boy, let's look at the carnage we have in this. So let's see what we have here. That is probably not healthy. Well, we're probably going to need these anyway, so let's just take those off now. Oh, can you see that already in there? Interesting. See, the unfortunate part about this is we need this rod and crank, but does not appear to want to move. Oh, there we go. I think we got some magic happening. Think strong thoughts. once I get it past, like, I can just pry up a little bit on it. Oh, here we go. No, I didn't help at all, actually. So it's higher. If it would be the exhaust, that would make sense. If I can get it past the exhaust port, I could pry down on the piston there, like so. Carnage. Okay, let's see here. Maybe if we keep holding it down. Yeah, there's some nice gouges in there. So this is textbook definition of somebody not using the right fuel when they're not supposed to use, well, not supposed to use the right fuel. You know what I mean? Textbook of using straight fuel. There we go. So the good part is I'm going to have a lot of parts for my recycling. So that's good, I suppose. Yeah. With the exception of the piston, I mean the rings don't look to be of any, doesn't appear to be broken or anything. There's two different wrist pins in there, or clips. See how that one comes down, unless it broke. And this one, there's nothing. I also hear something clicking. Oh, it's the ball bearings. The bearings are shot. Well, that's potentially a problem for the engine now, isn't it? I'll do take off that clip. This side doesn't even have a clip. Taking these off is not the easiest endeavor, but gotta do what you gotta do, right? When you take these off, cover your eyes, or at the very least look away. They like to jump. There we go. Now, we should be able to push this out this side. Theoretically. Out comes again our friend Mr. Hammer. There we go. So, part that failed is right here. recycling bit. That bearing's fine. This one, on the other hand, is missing a few. I don't really see anything to kind of good thing I saw where that landed. Oh, that should come off. Very nice. To put these on, both like that? Yes, they are. Let me think. So after some ingenuity, I got it taken out. I think that a lot of the pieces that I saw that were in the engine was actually just a broken bearing. So it might have just been the bearing that broke and just grenaded the entire engine. I looked at the, I looked at the gas, and it was fine. Like, it was definitely 2-cycle. So I don't actually think it was bad fuel. I tried taking off that one, but at this point I don't really want to damage it because it is running fine. So, let's see if I have to heat this up. And I definitely do. So, you have two options here. One, put this in the freezer for a couple hours. Heat this up with propane, or very carefully with a like MAP gas or butane torch or something. I would definitely not recommend that, though. It could get pretty hot. But I'm going to just try the heating it up first, and if I need to, I'll put it in the freezer. Now this is like 1,000,000 degrees. Let's see if this works. Oh, that worked too well. Ooh, yeah, that transferred some heat pretty fast. Yeah, I think we should be set. Let's just grab the outside of it and make sure everything spins like it should. Yeah, I think that one is set to go. I'm going to put the piston on, and yeah, that should be the next step. So everything is adequately cooled. It's the next day. I want to make sure everything is fine. Everything appears to be fine. I'm not going to worry about that one. That one looks good. Mainly because I don't want to take it off. So we have our piston. It has an arrow on it. And the arrow points towards the exhaust. That roller bearing doesn't even seem right. We're not going to worry about this one. Anyway, So always points towards the exhaust. So we need to figure out what end is the exhaust. Because this is the clutch end, this is the flywheel end, and when looking at it this way, I'm looking at the exhaust pointing forward and the intake coming that way. Okay, so we need to put it so the arrow's pointing that direction. Let's open up what we need. Got a new pin here. Let's get some oil ready. Oil is ready. Let's put a little oil in here. This is just Marvel. I like using it for assembly lube. It kind of worked in there. Granted, we still have to put it through the piston, but it's okay. For whatever reason, I'm not quite sure why, trying to find the crank and the connecting rod for this engine is insanely difficult. It doesn't make sense to me. I called my local shop, and they could get me one, but after you give them your car and potentially a blood sample, it just didn't seem like a legit idea. So I'm glad that this came off and it's not broken. So these pins can definitely be aggravating to install. Might need to have a oh, I'm right there. Okay. I need to use a needle nose pliers here. So after that aggravation, cursing names and whatnot, it's finally in. This is the old one. I didn't want to use that. So some of these have 2 rings. This one has 2. Some of them only have 1. So in the case where they have multiple, I just kind of like to make sure there's not like an indication on which one's which. Sometimes there's letters, sometimes there's numbers, or they're physically are different in one way or another. These appear to be the same with no letters or numbers on it. So as long as, see how it's a little, has like a little notch in there? So long as that notch can fit on the pin, should be fine. Now, piston rings are not forgiving, so you need to be very careful when installing them. A slight bend the wrong way will just cause them to spontaneously just snap. So you don't want that, obviously. Piston rings are hardened, which sounds odd why they'd be so brittle, but it's how they work. The first one's always the hard one. Don't want to score anything, but I need to get my fingers in there somehow. There we go. So like I said, you have to be very careful. This one should be a lot easier. That should just slide right over. They can also cut you, so be careful. They're very, very sharp. And there we have them. So unlike a 4-cycle or other common engines, you don't really have to worry about spacing the rings out because those pins are there to kind of hold them in place, so you don't have to worry about that. Next stage, no, I'm not going to put it in there yet. Next stage, I want to put in the seals. These are seals. They do basically what their name implies, they seal the chamber. And, well, no, I don't think I'll do this quite yet. Let's just put the piston in. So more or less, some of these give you a little bit of leniency, and they give you like a ridge that you can ride up on, and those are the ones that are nice. This is not one of them. But no matter what you do, you need to take some oil, get it all up in there. Same thing for the piston. Last thing you want to do is score your new piston when trying to install said piston. So there's not really of any special way of doing this. The reason why, though, I do have this out, and I very well might grab, let's see here, here we are, my pointed edge pick, is sometimes the piston ring will, part of it will be seated in its right position and the other part will be out, and you're pressing down, you're kind of putting a torque on it. You don't want to do that. The side that is in, you just take your screwdriver, pick, whatever, push it in, and it should go in far enough for you to work on the next ring. I just use my hands. I'm not going to really show all of that, mainly for the fact that it could take me 5 minutes. It could, I'll just do it now, why not? If it doesn't work out right, won't show you. But it could take 5 seconds, it could take 5 minutes, it could take a half an hour. I'm sure there's a special way of doing all this. So right now, oh, that was it. I guess this is the easy one. Okay, so now we press the piston down. So what are we getting hung up on here? I think I might have to press that bearing in a little bit more. Yeah, because the other side isn't quite working out very well, so I'm going to work on that bearing. So all I did was I took a socket, put my everything in a vise, and when you hammer on a bearing, you don't want to hammer on the outside, hammer on the inside if it's in this scenario. If the bearing is attached the other way, where it's actually being pressed in to like a different type of housing, you pound on the area that's being pressed, or if that makes any sense. Basically, the side that's being supported, that's the one you want to hit on. And of course, I took the torch and I heated it up a little bit. So now I want to do the seals. And one of these sides has a clip. I need to remember that. Steels are, oh, on the seal. This side is not open, this side is, and you can tell there's like a spring or some type of retainer. You just use that, that goes on the inside. Anyway, steels are notorious for having problems with their seals. So which is one of the reasons why I was really glad when I saw this kit, because I would like to replace the seals, especially in a chainsaw. So let's put that clip back in. Next, we're going to be putting the base on. Now, according to the Stihl instructions and the other one, they don't have a gasket. It kind of looks like they would, or at least some type of rubber seal. They don't. So what they do use, however, though, is this red Permatex. Not really sure why, but if that's what they want to use, then that's what they want to use. So we'll just open that. We don't want a lot. We want a very fine amount. So when we open this, we're not going to want to open up a lot. We'll just do like right there. Yeah, just like a little pinhole. Maybe a little more than that. And you'll know you've had the right Permatex if it's A, red, and B, smells worse than all the other ones. Okay. Before we start doing that, actually, no, let's do it now. So we need to put it all up through here. You want it touching the seal. But again, this is the only thing sealing the underside of the engine. You don't want a lot in these thinner areas. You can kind of get away with putting a generous amount on the insides right here, but that thinner wall, you don't. Man, this stuff stinks. You know that not caulking, but just general silicone that you'd buy in the 90s, and that stuff would never break. Like your house would burn down and your sink would still have it on there. Probably gave you cancer. That's what this smells like to me. So to put this on, kind of match it up. Believe, yeah. So this side goes on the other side. I'm going to want to set up actually first for a moment or two, and then we'll put that on. Never mind, I read the back of the tube and it says put this on immediately after while it's still wet. Okay, we're making some good contact. We're going to put this back on the base. So a few developments happened. I put the engine back on, as you can tell, but the bolts were not the right thread, the stock ones. I did not have any additional ones, so I actually ended up having to clean off the silicone I just put on, tap it, and then put them back in. So this is actually fresh silicone. But as you can tell, it works pretty good. This white piece also was a giant pain. You literally just have to press it on, and it doesn't really like to fit very well. Forwards and onwards. So actually, we should probably do the flywheel before we put that on there, huh? Might be a helpful to, you know. This is just a 1/2 inch nut. The torque spec that I'm going to be using today is impact driver. But that impact driver is a brush older one, and it needs to have it replaced, so it's not too bad. Just put our finger over the plug hole and see what we feel. Oh yeah, that's very nice compression in there. I would hope so. Now we could put this on. Where's the magnet? Right here? Yeah. This is an instruction card I got for a cam that I did in a previous episode. It's pretty thick paper, so I'm going to use that. I'm going to clean some of this grime off there. Now, don't worry too much about rust if there is any rust. Rust doesn't really cause too many problems when it comes to coils, unless it's legitimately like causing it to you know, break apart or, you know, something of that sort. But if it's just rust, I don't worry too much about that. That's not going to cause a no spark issue. It's going to cause maybe a poor spark issue if it's super thick, or it could potentially even kind of, I don't know, weather weld, that's a thing itself to it, where the rust literally just builds up on it to the point where it can't even spin the flywheel anymore. That's a problem. We're not going to put them all the way down, I'm just going to sink them down a little bit here. And this is supposed to go around probably through this little cavity here. So now we will put the piece of paper it's more or less the same thickness as a business card. Okay, now that it's on there, and tighten it. So now we should have some nice clearance. There was another wire. Here we are. I think I need to put that on there like that. I forgot a step. So I put that little wire on there. These two little wires connect. And they get drilled into this tiny little hole. I'm hoping that this is actually the right thread. Could be tighter. There we go. This is mostly the right thread. Now we need to put all this stuff through, and this through. That's not going to be fun, I can sense it already. Well, let's at least put the wires through. So I feel like that's going to be a little bit more troublesome. And then we have this breather hose that goes through this little slot. And we have the actual fuel line down here. Have to remember not to turn this upside down anymore. And then we are going to need to pull that boot through. We need to pull that through, so the needle nose probably be the... actually, this has a little rubber bit over here. That's not going to work. That should be pretty much on there. Let's take it. Enforcers. Not that much enforcement. There we go. Perfect. Now I think the boot is going to want to come through a lot easier since we're at the right angle for it. This is a fairly pliable boot. If it was really hard and nasty, you're just going to want to get a new one. Because I don't think it's going to survive this process. To make it a little more secure, we're going to want to put this back on. It's probably not going to be very easy considering nothing's bolted together yet. Okay, what's making this so awkward? There we go. Now we're just gonna drill it in their holes. Except that one came out. You know what? I'm just gonna take it off. Shove this right back through, and we'll put on a different one, because apparently this is not one to start with. There we are. Maybe the bottom. The bottom's a good idea to start with, right? Gives us something to at least be seated to. Everything about this is going to be difficult, I can tell already. There we go. Once it found itself. We don't want to do this one because that can. No, we could just put the whole recoil on. Why not? You know, might make it easier to put it on now. These weird recoils aren't necessarily the easiest to put on to begin with, anyway. What are we being held up on here? There we go. This one, though, gets that special little cup. Yep, everything about this is going to just be aggravating. I knew it. least these are going in normal. There's hair. So now I'm hoping that the rest of them will have to go find their correct location. There they are. And there should be one more right here. Where's that bolt? Oh. Maybe it was just this one. No, that one went right here. I must be missing it. I'll find another one later. Go ahead and grab the carb. Got the carb, and I took out off both sides and just kind of emptied the fuel out. I still don't think that was 4-cycle fuel. I still think it is 2-cycle. I just think the bearing grenaded itself. So first thing that we need to do is get that out of our way. We need to take this, kind of push it back into play here. That's probably not going to be the easiest thing. It's like this little rubber grommet. I remember doing this before with a different one, and having the carb here while trying to put this in wasn't the easiest. Just had a lot less space. So let's just take care of this now. Man, I need to get like a special tool. Never mind, I was reaching for it and it just snapped into place. So this goes on post like so. This goes in here like so. That needs to be pushed out of its way and ready for this brass piece. Copper, probably brass, and the gasket. One thing I can't remember is if it's a giant pain to put the throttle on before or after. Well, it only has to go like this. I mean, that's it. You probably can't see that very well. Let's just put the carb on first. What I don't want to do right now is put the fuel line on. This fuel line, I feel like, is going to be in our way. This is the choke, so we're good to go there. Now, just in case, I did, when I took the fuel line, or the carb off, I just took a quick shot of air. I just kind of blew through a couple of the passages, and that way I could get rid of the fuel, and if there's any potential blockages, I can get that resolved. So now, I do believe our next step is going would be this throttle linkage. Yeah, that wasn't too hard at all. Uh-oh. Now it's coming to bite us. It just wants to slide out of place. I don't quite have enough room for my finger. And of course it goes behind it. I'm gonna mess with this. Pliers were the trick. So now we have that. This, I can't quite see. Oh, there it is. That's where the hole is. Not encasing that. Just slides into place. This tube, I tell you. And boom. If I remember correctly, this tube connects right here. This is for the high and low and the idle. So, what awkward place for that tube. Okay. This needs to be pressed over a lot more though. Okay. I have the air filter. The gasket's still on that little housing. And let's see. There we are. That's one. So I got it down, but something I noticed, I think there's supposed to be a black piece of plastic that goes here. I do not see it though. So, kind of wonder if that just kind of went for a walk. I went through all my pieces here and there's nothing, so I think it just never came with the saw. Remember the stacking. We have this piece that just kind of swivels around. Then we have this facing the right way. Then we have the clutch. Now, usually there's like a special way that little pin or I don't know, piece of metal is supposed to be attached. It's usually oh, I see. It's on the drum. Okay, you see that little notch? That's where that wire goes in. It's not on the actual clutch. Oh, that's right. Oops. Clutches, I don't think I've ever run across one that wasn't reverse thread. I just don't think they exist. Because if they did, then every time Did I put it on backwards? Might have. There's nothing to pull it off of. If it did go the normal way, then every time you start your saw, it would potentially just come right off. Yeah, there we go. That is not, in my opinion, a good idea. I just realized we're going to need to put that piston stop back in. So, like I say, you don't want to ram that piston stop into the top of your fresh piston, so be careful. Spin it over till it actually touches it gracefully, and then you should be pretty much okay. This piston stop is pretty nice because it goes in 4 and 2 cycles. The only reason why you need it for a 4 is if you're doing like you're using like a timing wheel. It's the only reason why I would know that you need it. But if you do need it, it can work for both. So now we're going to put in our drum, knowing that our notch has to go with that little pin. There it is. That's going to go in there. And we have very few pieces left. I don't even know if I'm going to put the blade on now. I have to get my clip pliers. I forgot to record it, but just put the clips in with those pliers, and we should be good to go. So what that little, what the drum does with the oiler is every time you're actually sawing, the drum is going to be moving. When you're not, ideally, your drum's not moving, your clutch isn't engaged, and it will not be moving. So when you're cutting, it provides oil. When you're not cutting, it provides no oil. So that's a pretty nice little feature. It's not really a good angle to see this, but these don't actually attach to anything. They just like literally can come right out. They just have this little square end on them, and then they just go behind this little slot, and then once you put your exhaust on, it just kind of sucks it into place. But of course, as soon as I turn it off, it goes right on. So I'm just gonna give it a generous tapping with the drill. Now it's on. So I'm just going to button it up. I'm going to put the spark plug in, put the blade on. I think I do want to actually put the blade on, and put that extra screw that I can't find one and put it in the handle so it's not jiggly everywhere. And we will see if this runs. So I took the gas out and I put new non-ethanol. It's like 45-to-1 mix. It's a little higher. It's probably going to smoke. There is a lot of marble in there from assembly. So I'm going to move this out of the way and then we'll get started. So you're going to get a good shot of my garage shoes, but let's see. Which way's choke? That's choke. So choking should get us a pretty good result, hopefully. Looks like that came out of nowhere. Idle needs to be adjusted. So this is the other engine. See this port? That port is actually important. That's the one that had the little tube that went off there. I completely forgot about it. The reason why that's important is it provides a pulse from the engine to the carburetor. Now that tube should either connect to the carburetor directly or through some other method. This one I completely forgot about, and I did not connect it to its little attachment area, which is right underneath the plastic. I tried to film it, but you can't see a single thing. So remember to connect that. It's literally right next to the throat or the rubber boot. It just has a little piece that you just slips right on, and that hopefully is going to cure it. Here we are. I have my Stihl screwdriver here, ready and waiting. Let's see what we have here. That's no joke. Let's try that. Stop works. Well, there you have it. I think the owner will be surprisingly happy. Don't know if you can tell, but the oiling system definitely works. So that's good. So yeah, looks like that was just a problem. That pulse is it allows the carburetor to pump the fuel, and with every time I pulled on the trigger, it just wasn't having the fuel. It died no matter what I did to it, and then it kind of just hit me. I didn't connect that. So beware, don't do what I did. But other than that, it seems to work pretty good. I am going to let it run for a good 5 to 10 more minutes, just idling, and then probably do a final tune. I'm going to cut some pine, maybe maple, not sure yet. That's really the only way to really properly tune it. You can do like what I call a field tune, where you kind of just make it run a little rich. In fact, I think I'm going to do that now, just in case. And then, because when there's no load on it, it's never going to really perform the same way as if it had load. If it has a load, it's going to need more fuel. So with no load, you kind of want to run it rich. And then when the load comes, it probably will have adequate fuel to do it. So it might smoke a little bit. I'm surprised you're not seeing more smoke to begin with because of the vast amount of marble we put in there, but oh well. But that's a good sound. So this is how you replace the engine and bearing and piston and pretty much everything except for the rod and the crank on a Stihl, this is again, MS210C. I do believe the exact same process is for the MS021, and well, probably more or less all the lower MS series before you get to like the really big ones, because this is only a 40cc. Whatever the 42 is, it's the same. I think they make it 44 or 45, one and two. Should be the same. The engines are basically the same, and the housings are more or less the same, with the exception of the recoil. I think they still have the standard recoil. Okay, will this help you out? Throw a thumbs up. I will catch everyone later. Definitely subscribe. I will keep on posting. If you have any questions, or you think I did something wrong, or you want to discuss anything, definitely put a comment below. I will catch everyone later. Have a good night.